Okay, so now we're going to start by trying to build a Flappy Bird clone. Now, this game has been popular in the past, uh, so popular the creator wanted to take it off the App Store for some reason, and we're going to build something that functions relatively similarly, except if you want to add images and sound, you'll do so on your own time. Let's start by building up a new template. And we will name this Bird Crasher, because that's essentially what the game is. And we're going to start by renaming template.html to index.html. And if we open this, we'll notice that we have a blank screen. And the blue comes from CSS. The white is our canvas from p5.js. And if we want to look at the code, we'll see that we should change our comments to fit. Should change our title to fit. And you can put any instructions in here along with associated HTML. So you'll see our instructions come along up here. Now, one thing that we're going to be doing as we move through this is adding new files. This tells me that I'm including some files from my JavaScript folder. One of them is p5.js and one of them is template.js. We're going to add a couple more. This is just our table of contents telling us which files we need to include. One's going to be called bird, and one's going to be called, let's call it an obstacle, or a stalactite. No, too many syllables. Let's call it pipes. Or pipe. Pipes. So because Flappy Bird has a pipe on the bottom, pipe on the top, we're going to treat that as one thing because they'll always sort of match up with each other and leave some space in between to move through. So let's open up some JavaScript and get started. We're going to open up template.js, which is our game logic file. And this is where we will do all our game stuff. Everything else will be for structure. We're going to start out by making a score variable, setting it to 0, and maybe have it be, let's have it based on time. So first we're going to do a fill of 0 to make it black, text size 20, text score. So we're going to show the score on the page at position 50, 50. And this is just to make things easy for us. We'll get that set up at the start. So our score is displaying here. And we can say that the score is increased every so often. If the frame count %60 is 0, that means if the frame count when divided by 60 gives us a remainder of 0, meaning every 60 frames we'll say score plus plus. Every second we'll get a bigger score. And we see that works properly. Now, you could also change this so that score increases as you pass pipes. I'll leave that to you to build in if you'd like to. So one thing that we need is we need a bird object, and we need a pipe object. And we're going to say that we're going to construct them with the constructor function. And we're going to say that our bird object comes from the bird class, and our pipe object comes from the pipe class, or new pipes, let's call it. But in order to have those, we should probably make some files to hold them. So let's make a new file and call it bird.js, and we'll save it to the JS folder in our bird crasher folder. And let's make another new file and call it pipes.js. And we'll start with bird. We're going to make we're going to define bird for the computer so it knows what a bird is. So we'll say function bird. And a bird is going to have some information and some functions, some actions. And the first thing that we're going to have is we're going to say that a bird is going to have a width and a height. And maybe our bird is 40 wide. And maybe our bird is 40 high. Let's make it a square bird. This dot x. We'll set the x value to be 50 to start, and we'll say this dot y equals height over 2. We'll say we start in the middle of the page. Likewise, we probably want an acceleration value, and we'll want a velocity in the y direction so that we can flap upward. Remember, the bird moves up and down on the page based on input. This is all we really need for our object. Now, the next thing we need is what it does. Well, first we need to be able to show the bird. And that's going to be a function. And we're going to say that we want to fill with, say, this is a nice blue bird. So we'll say 0, 0, 250, 200. And we'll say that we want, maybe we'll make it a baby blue bird. 200, 150, 150, 255. And let's say we want it to be a rectangle, although you could make it an ellipse. And we want it to exist at the location of the bird, this rectangle. Well, the location of the bird is defined as x, which belongs to the bird. That's what this means. This dot x says the bird's x value, which is 50. But we're not just going to write 50 because maybe that will change. We'll write this dot x. Likewise, for the y value, write this dot y. For the width and height, we'll write this dot w and this dot h because x, y, w, and h are the order of the arguments inside rectangle. Likewise, I want a function that can make me move. And motion for the bird is going to be pretty simple. It's going to be saying that our y position is going to be changed by the velocity in the y direction. And that this dot vy is going to be changed by the acceleration. This will let us fall down as time goes on unless we give some vy input. Now, we might also want something saying this.flap, and that's going to be a function. But when we flap, all we're going to do is we're going to say this.vy, and we're going to add to it some, we'll add some value to it. Let's say we add a -5. And by adding a -5, that means we're going upward. And let's add -10. Now let's try to use our bird. Our bird needs to be shown on the page. Notice, well, let's comment out our pipes for now. Notice that bird, which is an object, is created right here, and it's stored in the variable bird. So we'll say that bird.show, we're going to go into bird and use its show function. It says go inside, use show with no arguments. And we'll also say bird.move. So let's refresh the page, and we see instantly we get this bird that sort of crashes to the ground. Let's try to make it flap. One thing that we'll do, I'm going to try to have it flap based on user input with a spacebar. So we'll say function, we'll actually do it with a click. Mouse clicked. When mouse clicks, we do bird.flap. Whenever we click anywhere, we'll make the bird flap. And let's make this a little wider and a little taller. Refresh. And I click. And it seems like maybe my acceleration is a little too big, or maybe my velocity isn't big enough. It needs to be fixed up a little bit, but obviously as I click, I'm going up and down. So we're in pretty good shape. We need to be able to lose when we fall off the edge, or when we hit a pipe. So we're going to do the following things. We're going to say that if, and we also can't hit the ceiling. So we're going to make a variable, and I'm just going to semicolon these for consistency. We're going to make a variable called game over. And we're going to set it to false. When we set a value to true or false, well, there are types of variables called Boolean variables that can be true or false. And true or false will let us, it's an easy value to check. So what we can say here is that if bird.y is less than 0, or bird.y is greater than the height, game over is true. Single equals true. And then we can say, hey, let's stop adding to the score. If game over is false, we want to do the adding to the score. And we want to show the bird and move the bird. But otherwise, we'll say that we want to do text game over in the center. And we won't show the bird anymore. We won't do anything else. We'll just say, hey, oh, game over. Or, hey, game over. Hey, okay, we went to the top, game over. So we can't go above or below the screen. This will also come in handy if we hit pipes. So far, we have a game where you have to be able to click and not hit the top or the bottom. But we want some pipes to come at us to make our lives a little more difficult, as they're not already. So let's go through and make some pipes. So we have this pipes constructor that we want to make. It defines what pipes are. And let's go through and make some pipes. So we'll go through and we'll say that we want a constructor function. And the same thing here. We want our info and we want our actions or functions. Our class variables and our functions. So first, pipes. I'm going to do pipes a little bit differently. We're going to say we have this dot x top, this dot x bottom, this dot w top, this dot w and this dot h. Dot h top, this dot h bottom. Though both pipes will always be the same width, so we're going to have two pipes here. We're going to have one with an x value, and the x value actually will always be the same as well, but the y values will be different. This dot y top and this dot y bottom. So let's reorganize this. So we have two pipes, and they're going to be leaving some space between them. And that space may be random, but it'll always be big enough to let our bird through. Our bird is of size 40, so our space should always be probably about twice that, at least 80. So something we might want as well, space between the pipes. And so we're always going to start our x. Let's start our x off the page at width plus 100. And our width of our pipes, let's set it to be sort of a random value between 50 and 100, or 50 and 80, just for a little bit of variance. And our space between pipes has to be somewhere between random 80 and random 100. Let's say random 200 to make it either really easy or really hard to get past. The y top is always going to be 0. The y bottom and the h top is going to be something like this. This is going to be a little bit of math, and I'd recommend you draw it out on paper to sort of get a sense of what I'm doing. I'm going to be trying to determine how big my top pipe should be. Now, we can always say that the top pipe is going to be going to live in the top half of the page, and the bottom pipe is going to live in the bottom half of the page. If you want to make something a little more complex, you're welcome to. But I'm going to say that the h top is going to be equal to the height over 2 minus half of the space between the pipes. And that makes sure that I'm very sort of symmetrical here. Actually, you know what? We're going to say we're going to have some, this is one way to do it. It's this will make the holes always in the center of the page. Let's add a little bit of spice to this. Let's say that we'll have the height over 2, so we're always going to be sort of in that top half, and we're going to subtract or add. No, we'll subtract anywhere from the space between the pipes over 2 to the space between the pipes. So that way we're having sort of this we can always multiply this a little bit. We can modify this a little bit later. And one thing that we can do is we can, from here, say that the y bottom is going to be the y top, this dot y top, this dot, plus h top plus this dot, the space between the pipes. And then h bottom will just be the height. Would just be height minus y, this dot y bottom. Now, if you're only doing one pipe, all you have to do is sort of randomly generate it. This is a way of making our pipes a little more complicated. Now, the functions are going to again be show. And for the show, it's going to be a little more complicated because we have to show two pipes. So we'll fill with the green Mario style pipes, and we'll say that we want one rectangle with this dot x, this dot y top, this dot w, this dot h top. And we'll make another rectangle with the other variables. And let's see just, and we'll say we also need a velocity. Let's say it's -10 to move left by 10 every frame. We'll say this dot move equals function. And in move, we'll just say this dot x plus equals this dot vx, and we'll have it be that. So let's try to see if we can get some pipes showing. Pipes.show, pipes.move. And I'll have to play this proper here. Oh, didn't show. I probably missed a this dot. This dot, this dot, this dot, this dot, this dot, this dot. And let's inspect. Pipes. Pipe. Okay, great. Now we need to reset these pipes, or respawn when they go off the page. And all we'll do is we'll take all this information, we'll copy it, and we'll paste it. And one thing that we can do to make it a little spicier is add some random from 100 to like 500 to change the spacing. And then let's try again. And we need to actually use this, so we say here if pipe.x minus pipe.w plus is less than 0 pipe.reset or respawn. And that way, when it goes off the page, it should come back as new pipes. Now, to make it collide, we're going to borrow from some of our other videos. We're going to say this.collide is a function in pipes. And we're going to say that we're going to take in a bird, and we're going to worry about the front edge of the bird, although really we should worry about the whole bird. And we're going to say basically, when is the bird colliding? And the answer is, well, first, the bird left is bird dot x. Bird right is bird dot x plus bird dot w. Bird top is bird dot y, and bird bottom is bird dot y minus or plus bird dot h. And we're going to use these to see when the bird is not colliding with the pipes. So we'll say there are a few ways to go about this, but one way to go about this is to say that, well, first, if bird left is greater than the pipes, or the this dot x plus this dot w, or the bird right is less than this dot x, or the bird top is greater than this dot h top, and bird top, bird bottom is less than this dot y bottom, or, so this means if we're between, we're not colliding. And I think that's it. And so what we can say is, well, we are not colliding here. And if we're not colliding, what do we want to do? Well, we want to, or if we are colliding, we'll say return false, we haven't collided. Otherwise, we'll return true, and that we have collided. And when we've collided, we want to say the game is over. So one thing we can say is, and this may be slightly off, but we'll see how it goes. One thing we can say is that game over is equal to whatever we get back from worrying about our collision. If the pipe collides with the bird, we'll get back the value true. If the pipe doesn't collide with the bird, we'll get back the value false. So this is something we want to worry about we also want to pay attention to if we hit the ground. So one way we can say this is that we care about whether we hit the ground already, if that's true or false, or if we hit the pipe already. So let's see how this works. Let's try now hitting the pipe. Yep, so that will work. And that's all we need. Now, pipes is a really complicated piece of equipment here because we're trying to go between them. If we're just trying to see one pipe, it's a much simpler process. If you do pipes like this, I highly recommend you spend some time really getting to know these ideas by drawing them on paper. If you want to modify this a little bit, you can change the spacing here. Maybe we want to height over 4. Maybe we want to do something like this. Maybe we'll do something. So all these options are sort of giving us some interesting height distributions, but you can always change that by modifying these values. And I'm going to leave us there for now. This part is something you might want to ask questions about, as is this part. That's what this is. So thank you, and try it out.